Hello. According to the little lighty up bits on my screen, we are live, off and running. Who's already in the chat? Crossfitter and Luke having a good old chat. Talking about the footy. Yeah, well, it's that time of the year certainly when people who enjoy the footy ball really enjoy themselves and get well into it. And yes, living in Melbourne, it's pretty hard to avoid. I have to try and remember if I'm traveling across town. The most direct route to get to Aidsy's place, for instance, goes right past the MCG. So I have to try to remember to check if I'm going over there on the weekend or weeknights. There are some, I don't go over there weeknights though, but I have to check if there's a game on because it will completely fuck up the traffic. And hey, Luke, I am fine, thank you. How's things in your world? All very cruisy in my world. Yeah, not an enormous amount happening, I guess. I mean, for me, the world continues to be the world, and many things happen in it. And we can do tonight. We can chat about them. That's the thing we can do. We can chat about the things that are happening. That's a thing that I will allow to happen, for there to be chat about the state of the world. Just the state of it, honestly. What is going on in this wacky world of ours? I'm sure there is... Really, what's that? Ah, okay. I'm just looking at something on our YouTube page and realizing I didn't know what a particular thing was. Thinking, oh, that's what it is. Okay, now I know, I guess. So that's a good thing that I know that now. It's crazy world, and yes, that reference to the banhammer is, yes, the saddest of sad boys, who is weirdly obsessed with me. I will never quite understand why he's so obsessed with me, but he is. Hey Charlie, how you going? Look, you're moving house at the end of the month. Oh, good luck, buddy. Moving house is just the worst. As I have complained about everyone basically agrees, moving, even trouble-free moving is trouble. Ducks on a rock, 6:03 a.m. Good morning to you. Rise and shine, as they say. Yeah, but when I moved about 2 years ago, and I hadn't moved in 10 years. Oh my God, you build up a lot of shit in 10 years. The move was a fucking nightmare, but we lived barely. Oh yes, Luke, that's it. That's the really obsessed guy. On Soch, 5 a.m. There you go. I can't tell if you all are early risers or insomniacs, because by 5 or 6 a.m., some people are awake, but of course some people don't get to go to sleep and maybe working night shift, who knows. My alarm goes off at 6:15 a.m. to give me enough time to get ready for work. I like to get to work early because I kind of have to cross town for work, so the earlier I go, usually the quicker and more hassle-free the commute is. So yeah, so I'm up at 6:15, but not watching YouTube, really. I know I have to have a shower before I can face it. It's good enough. Even if I had a shower the night before, I almost always have one in the morning, because I feel like I can't face the world without a shower. it just like wakes me up properly. And I think it's mainly psychological, that physical act of, you know, getting clean makes me feel ready to face the day. I know some people are evening bathers, but for me, it's the morning. And hey, Justin, how are you doing? I think part of it is where I grew up in Dubbo, West New South Wales. It got so fucking hot in summer. You'd get all sweaty during the night. So even if you had a shower before going to bed, you'd feel gross in the morning because you'd be all sweaty. And I remember having this conversation, this is right back at school, because I was not a universal view, and other people were saying, actually, I think there's one of the teachers saying, like, don't you feel like dirty going to bed? And I go, what? I'm going to fucking bed. I'm going to bed. What is it? I can't wrap my head around that. I mean, if I'd been doing shit and I was actually dirty, but just a normal day, I don't feel. But, different people think, oh, Justin, you do morning and night showers. Okay, I can't really get on that. Yeah, so bed sweat, no. Really, as I said, when it's hot or when you're sick, this one, I had glandular fever when I was at college, and the reason I worked out I was sick, because it was summer when I got it, and I was sweating like a little piggy, like it's just sweat's pouring off me. In my mind, I convinced myself it's hot, that's why I'm sweating. But my girlfriend sleeping next to me is not sweating at all. I think it was after 2 nights of me just dripping sweat and her not sweating at all. I went, oh, I might be sick. So yeah, went and saw a doctor and said, yeah, I think it's glandular fever. We're going to have to do a blood test. All right. Went and got a blood test, then went back for the results. And he said, yep, glandular fever. And I went, cool, what do we do now? He goes, there's nothing. There's not actually a treatment for it. And so what? Because I hate blood tests. I was like, so why the fuck did I get a blood test if you're not going to do it? He said, I had to rule out everything else, basically. Like, if we know you've got glandular fever, cool, we know what to look out for. And he gave me like warning signs that, it might be getting worse, and because you can end up in hospital. But I felt really ripped off that I had to go through a blood test, and I fucking hate blood tests. I hate getting needles. And yeah, it's not exactly a fucking small bore syringe they stick in your arm for a blood test either. So I really didn't like that. And it felt like it was for no reason. Hey, Stella, how are you? Oh, the other funny thing about glandular fever, the doctor said, if you get sick at all in the next year or so, and they do another blood test, it'll show up glandular fever again, just so you know. That doesn't mean it's come back. It just means you're going to test positive for glandular fever for quite a while. And I was like, oh, well, isn't that fun? And sure enough, it happened. I got quite sick about a year later, 8 months to a year later, and it was a different doctor. This was like a campus doctor, and did the blood test and went back. Here's the results. And he goes, oh, you've got glandular fever. And I went, oh, there's a big surprise. And he went, well, that's a weird reaction. And I go, oh, sorry, I should have told you I had it last year. And he said it'd show up and test again. So whatevs. Hey, Catherine and Raddest Scorpion. And I am doing well, and I hope you're all doing well too. I like that we're off to a quiet start. So maybe it isn't banhammer at all tonight, because those dickheads are boring. Luke, train v car on the Frankston line. Yes, you sent me that link. Car hit a train hit a car on the Frankston line, which if I had been trying to get home by train would have been a big deal. But because of where I'm working, I was driving. So it just, they were saying that was a big effect. they were saying if you were on the Frankston line, which I am, you should expect your trip home to take an hour or two longer than normal. It's like, oh my fuck. Yes, Scorpion. I think they're a bit slow to start. Okay, you're midday in Russia. Cool. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's you have the markers for glandular fever. That's like chicken pox staying in your system for life, and if you're really unlucky, remanifesting as shingles in later life. And if you get cold sores, I haven't had one for years, but that means the virus. And both chickenpox and shingles and herpes and cold sores are all related viruses. They're all strains of herpes. You know, whenever you say herpes, you think of the sexually transmitted disease, the nasty genital sores, and mind you, never get oral sex from someone with big canker on their lip, because it can and don't kiss anyone with a big canker on their lip, because it's very transmissible. Oh, Red Scorpion, sorry. Yeah, you're from Portugal, you're implying Russian trolls. That's not an awful joke. I just a bit thick. Oh my God. Was the car broken down on the Urban track, or was it an accident? You're right, Charlie. Maybe it takes the word to filter out to the trolls. Maybe they'll appear in the second half. Yes, Stella, I know they're not all the same, but they're all They're all types of herpes. There's your actual genital herpes, cold sores, and chickenpox. They're all different, but they're all strains of a herpes virus. That's fun, isn't it? You never get rid of it. You got it. It's in your, doesn't mean it'll ever necessarily come up. I think I haven't had a cold sore in years, and I used to get them a lot. I think if you get it when you're a kid, and you always get it from an adult who has, in my case, it's probably my mum, because my mum got cold sores. You know, an adult who's infectious, kisses you, and and I think puberty, with all your hormones going over, makes you a bit more susceptible to cold sore coming out. And I think as an adult, and look, this is completely unscientific, and I could be completely wrong, but it's my lived experience. I got the cold sores much more often when I was younger, and I hardly ever get them now. I think, and again, I don't know if this is scientific or not, or if this is like bias confirmation, but I feel like extreme stress makes me susceptible to a cold sore coming out. I think like in the last 10 or so years, I've had a cold sore come up maybe twice, and both times I was going through really quite extreme stress. And I remember I half jokingly and half seriously said to the workplace, which was stressing me right the fuck out, that actually happened to me for 10 fucking years. This place has done that to me. So, and sort your shit out. Stop putting me through all this stress. The Urban is that a tunnel? It's only meant for buses, and someone in a car thinks there's no traffic on that, I'm going to drive on that. Luke, the Adelaide expert. I mean, I think I've been to Adelaide twice, and I feel like I've seen those signs. I think it's saying bus only, but it's a while since I've been there. So yes, I'm not very familiar with Adelaide at all. I was kind of chuffed when I finally ticked off my last capital city. I think the last capital city I visited was Perth. It was for an event in Perth. So the last one was either Perth or Hobart. And there was only a couple of years ago, like in the last decade. I only did Adelaide, Perth, and Hobart in the last decade. I don't travel that much, quite honestly. I would like to travel more. It is a regret of mine that I have not traveled more, but I've at least done every capital city now. So, do what I'd like to do, because I've done the Great Ocean Road drive a lot, and I've done the Great Ocean Road to get to Adelaide as well. But a friend of mine did a trip where he kept going along the southern coast road all the way around South Australia and the southern part of Western Australia. I think he went around to Perth. And yeah, the photos were magnificent, like some amazing scenery on that coast road as you go around. I would like to do that one day. You know, I'm not so keen on doing the middle, like driving across the Nullarbor, where you get days of nothing. I heard the story once with the Japanese tourists going on the Indian Pacific train when there's, you know, 2 days of nothing. And they like to take a lot of photos with timestamps on them just to show everyone back home where everything's really crowded and congested and close together. There's this thing where you can go for a couple thousand kilometers of absolute nothing, and it blows people's mind. Whereas Scorpion, don't travel that much. Australia's capital cities. I mean, that's like, was it? That's Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane. Those were the first. East Coast. I did all the East Coast first because I live on the East Coast, and I did a holiday in Darwin ages ago, like, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, a long time ago. And then in the last 10 years, I did Perth, Adelaide, and Hobart. So, I mean, you know, it's only 8 cities. Load of music elevator wanted, oh, a 4-seat airplane, fly the coast and then down the middle to the rock. Luke, what's Brisbane like? Like Adelaide, honestly. Adelaide and Brisbane are just big country towns. I mean, Brisbane's hotter and more humid than Adelaide, obviously, because you're getting up towards the tropics by the time you get up there. It's not really tropical. You have to go much further north for it to get really tropical. Now, Darwin, for instance, which is way up there in the tropics, is fucking hot and sweaty. It was when I was there. Humidity was there, and there's a constant smell of decomposing. Well, I think it's quite hard to tell the difference between decomposing garbage and decomposing plant matter on that scale, because they both smell awful. Like, I've been to the Philippines, Manila, smells like decomposing garbage. It's a very polluted city. It's a humid tropical city with surrounded by lots of rubbish and open sewers and whatnot, and it smells like rotting garbage. And honestly, Darwin doesn't smell that different, but in Darwin, it is probably rotting vegetation, as opposed to, you know, the Philippines. It's rotting garbage. So yeah, this was the weirdest thing about my stay in Darwin, because there's a huge amount of wildlife up there, and like, we were staying in this little lodge. I don't know, you know, it was almost a slightly upmarket from a backpacker place, but, you know, there was a bunch of rooms, and, you know, they had a swimming pool on. And at night, when you're sitting by the swimming pool and the lights outside, and yeah, Australian summer lights attract lots of bugs. In Darwin, that attracts lots of geckos, because there's lots of food for the geckos. So the lights were just surrounded by geckos who were catching all the bugs that were attracted to the light. And I thought that was cute. And I'd been there a couple of days, and I was walking from this little lodge where we were staying into where the shops were in Darwin. I forget how long I'd been there, but it was at least like 3-4 days. And I saw this lizard just sitting on the footpath. It was a bearded dragon. They have quite long tails, so like from nose to tail, it's like this long. Yeah, they're not dangerous or anything. They're quite like a bearded dragon. And I was like, that's so cool. It's just there out in the open. It doesn't care. That's wild. Because there are lizards all around here. Particularly blue tongues and a few other lizards over here, but they're very shy and you rarely see them unless you're getting right out in the suburbs. And this was right in the middle of town. Like, oh, look at that. Just a lizard just hanging out. He doesn't care. And it was almost as if, having seen one, I was suddenly aware they were fucking everywhere. Like, but they stay still and they're, a lot of the time they're sort of somewhat camouflaged. But it was like, having seen one, I was able to recognize a pattern. That's a bearded dragon, and they were fucking everywhere. And they'd obviously been there the whole time. Just for whatever reason, I wasn't seeing them because they weren't moving about and they were somewhat camouflaged. It was like, having seen one, I realized they were everywhere, like so many lizards. Big boy, you like the chirping geckos? Yes, there's a few different types of geckos. Geckos generally, I think, are really cute lizards. And yeah, there's a lot of them. Some people call them barking geckos, that make a little kind of chihuahua type noise, little chirpy, barky noise. But there are lots of different sorts of them. And there are, of course, the crocodiles up in Darwin as well. That's a fun thing that sounded really cheesy, and I kind of wasn't going to do it because it sounded cheesy. That the jumping crocodile tour, and I'm so glad I did it. It's wild. These people basically, trained is probably too strong a word, but the crocodiles have become accustomed to, if this boat, and it's kind of like a 2 double-decker ferry, and it's all glassed in on the sides, so a crocodile can't get you. The crocodiles have become accustomed, if this boat comes down through their territory, and this whole fucking river is the crocodile's territory, they put this long sort of boom out, and there's a big bit of meat dangling down, and they dangle it down the water, and the crocs come to get it. And just as the croc goes for it, they lift it up out of the water, and the croc will launch itself out of the water to get the meat. And the crocs range from juveniles that are about, I guess they're a couple years old, and they're 2 to 3 meters from snout to tail tip. So yeah, if you're into imperial measurements, between 5 and 10 feet, depending on their age. And they look comparatively slender. And they do this weird thing that somewhat defies belief, but it shows how strong they are. They're like strong swimmers, incredible muscles. They launch themselves up and they sort of swim up, and they will launch their entire body, tail and all, completely out of the water to get the meat. And it's like, I don't know how they do it. It seems to defy physics that they do it. But then you get the big fucking crocs, and these ones, they'll be anywhere from 3 to 6 meters, and they're fucking huge hulking dinosaurs. So these are between 10 and 20 feet, fucking huge, and they're massive. Like, the younger ones are quite slender in comparison, but these older ones, they just get fucking massive. Like, I saw some, without exaggerating, there were some skulls in some of the museums, and they're like yay big. Like, they're fucking huge, and they're so big they can't launch themselves all the way, but they launch half their body, and so it's just this huge fucking dinosaur goes out of the water. And I almost didn't go on the jumping crocs tour because it sounded really cheesy. And I'm so glad I did, because I want to go back there because, like I said, this was like 25, 30 years ago, pre-YouTube. it would make for some very good videos, these things just launching themselves out of the water. They're pretty goddamn impressive. There's a big thing like, you do not want to get lost in croc country because they will fuck you up. And it's not just being in the water, though. Most often when people are taken by crocs, they are rather stupidly in the water. And but land is no good. Like if you're in a mangrove, these really muddy mangroves where you're gonna, the mud's so gloopy, if you're walking through it, you tend to sink like up to your ankles, and if you stand still for a while, you probably sink up to your knees. And these crocs can move across that surface. They kind of skate across the surface really fast. Like they can do 50 to 100 meters in a burst really fast. If one of them gets you on mud, you're fucked. You might think it's only water I've got to worry about. No, if you are by the shore and one decides to go after you, you are in serious trouble. The crocs jump naturally to catch kites when they're just for a second. I'm going, what? Kids are flying kites out in the park, and they go. And I remember there are these small birds of prey called kites around Darwin, Northern Territory generally, and they're like pigeons. There are so fucking many of them. We saw them over the garbage dump because they're scavengers. They're birds of prey, but they're also scavengers. And like over garbage dump, we just saw swarms of them, and it was just like flocks of pigeons, except they're these little birds of prey. We did have a funny thing. Did a tour through Catherine Gorge. Did Kakadu and Catherine Gorge. Lots of amazing scenery and wildlife to see there. And when we stopped in this park for some lunch, and the two had the Devon sandwiches or something equally gross. And the guy was telling us not to feed the kookaburras for two reasons. One, it just encourages them to because kookaburras lose fear of humans quite quickly, and feeding them encourages them to hassle people. And second is it's much better for them if they hunt rather than eating processed meats. But it was impossible to do because kookaburras are so cute, and they would come really close to you to get meat. And even when someone flying threw a bit up in the air and they swoop and catch it midair, and then a couple of times when a kookaburra had taken a piece of meat and flown off, a kite swooped it and stole the meat. Kites are more aggressive than kookaburras. The kookaburras will do the thing, but kites don't like humans, and kookaburras do like humans. So the kookaburras would come up to the humans and get the food, but then when they flew off, the kites would monster them and take it. Oh, I see. Justin's been reading China might use its army against the protesters in Hong Kong. And AngryAussie is saying, what do you mean might? Well, look, clearly China have the track record with Tiananmen Square, and a few sort of public mouthpieces for China on the Tiananmen Square anniversary did say it was the right thing to do. It preserved stability in China. China is only as wonderful and prosperous as it is now because we stopped those unpatriotic protesters. There is no doubt in my mind within the halls of power in China, they are having very serious conversations about sending in the soldiers. I think they will be concerned about how the world will perceive that. because they suppressed most of the vision, not all, but most of the vision of killing the protesters in Tiananmen Square. But because there is that much more freedom in Hong Kong, no matter how much they tried to tamp down, like if they cut off the internet, if they put in jammers for mobile signals, there's no way, if they sent in the army against these protesters, there's no way the world wouldn't see it in HD video. So that would have to at least give them pause for thought. Yeah, that's another fun one, Reddit Scorpion. The re-education camps for the, I'm always worried I'm almost sure I'm pronouncing this wrong, the Uyghur minority Muslims, I think, from the north of China. This is the thing, China is so big, and, you know, billion people or however many fucking people live in China. And the idea that Chinese means one thing, there are like multiple, this is in the West, it's so easy to go, oh, Chinese people. There are so many different ethnic groups within, you know, the massive area that is China. And there's this one, there's one minority ethnic group close to Russia, I think, is where they come from. And yes, they are majority Muslim, and they've never really gone along with the communist no religion thing. And so, yeah, the latest thing is re-education, as in concentration camps to fucking, I don't know, strap people to a chair and give them ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, until they change their ways. I don't know what they're doing, but it doesn't sound good when someone decides, oh, yes, we don't like that religion, so we're putting them all in a re-education camp. That's very dodgy. Just what do you mean China would be a rising power? China is rising power. This is the bloody century of the rise of China. It's it's from the outside, it's very easy to draw black and white conclusions. But there's probably a lot of subtleties that aren't immediately apparent to us. Red Scorpion, is China in recession? I don't know. I have not done a lot of reading on economics in China. So I don't know what their economy is doing. And yeah, what even does recession mean in a state-controlled economy? China has been having this growing middle class for the last 2 decades. This very much changing the face of Chinese society, with the ruling party embracing a lot of market ideology, but still having the state control the economy. So it's incredibly hard to know what's really happening there. I think there's probably, it's always hard to separate out also the propaganda from the reality. And also, you know, then you can get into great big metaphysical arguments about what is reality. You know, if 2 people experience the same thing yet describe their experience completely differently, is one of them wrong? Is one of them lying? Like, no, because we're really complicated and we can experience literally the same thing and have completely different feelings about it, draw completely different interpretations of it, and that's with everyone involved being totally sincere. And once you get to situations where you have reasons to doubt the sincerity of people, then it gets even more complicated. Good line of thinking, Luke. What is normal? As the thing, our understanding is, look, like I did the dry run of podcast with AngryAussie on the weekend, definitely doing more of it. And I'm going to do one soon with him. It's going to be about philosophy and science and some cutting edge science. AngryAussie has done a lot of reading on quantum mechanics and really weird cutting edge stuff. And because his Aspie brain can actually understand a lot of the complex stuff, because he can actually pick apart the components of it and see how they fit together. Whereas for a lot of people, and I'd put myself in this group, it can be a bit overwhelming. And even fun. It's kind of funny. This is where I laugh. Just do another hot button topic, the issue of transgender identity. When you get these very emotional conservative people who go, there are definitely only two genders, definitely. And no matter how you define it, no matter how you define gender, sex, sexual identity, neither science nor culture nor history supports the idea there are only two. There's only male and only female. There is, if you're just talking about physical characteristics, there's a whole spectrum of intersex people. You know, there are studies that show differences in people's brain. Someone who may have, male external genitalia, but their brain, and the transgender person, an analysis shows their brain has more in common with a typical female. So it's the thing, actual science and also history and culture and society, none of these support the idea there are only two genders. That's one thing, but once you get into the further edges of science, like really weird, wild stuff, you have to start accepting pretty early on that a common layperson's understanding of time is absolutely categorically wrong. This whole thing, you know, time is something that happens in linear progression, and there's a definite line from past to present to future, and it all goes one way. You get the people at like the cutting edge of science going like, afraid not. When you really get into it, that is really quite meaningless. And this is also the God idea. It's like people say God must exist because how did the universe come into being? And then you say, well, how did God come into being? And they go, God was just always there. Well, why can't the universe just have always been there? And they go, how did that work? And my answer is, hell if I know. I'm not that smart. But there is a growing consensus. There's some variation, like, you know, what shape is the universe? The universe is a torus, which a donut. The universe is a donut. And so when we go Big Bang and expansion, it's not from a point radiating out in every direction, which is how a lot of people understand it. This concept of the universe being a torus, the Big Bang went out and everything's going out and around, and at some point it's all going to come back, and there's going to be the big crush, the big implosion, where everything's going to go back to nothing, and then the Big Bang will happen again. Now that's going to happen on a timeline that's literally incomprehensible to humans. You can say 700 billion trillion years if you like, and you think that you've got a handle on what that means, but the timelines we're talking about are literally incomprehensible to humans. People can say they understand that concept, but they don't in any real way. But the thinking in scientific circles is how do you explain things coming from nothing? Is that time isn't linear. There wasn't a beginning that's moving to an inevitable end. Time is a cycle. And I'm probably explaining this wrong because I've not done a lot. I've done a bit of reading on it, not a lot. And so I'm probably saying some stuff that's wrong. I like that music. That's actually basically the right answer. Where did the Big Bang happen? And the answer's everywhere. And Justin, look, sexuality, no one really knows. You know, the theories have gone back and forth so many times. I mean, on one level, I like to say the causes of homosexuality or the determinants of sexuality, it's meaningless. What does it matter what causes it, what the source is, whether it is biologically predetermined, whether it's a choice, whether it's a product of your environment and the things that happen to you? It's all irrelevant. The relevant thing is there are all these different people with different sexualities going across the whole spectrum from, you know, being hetero and never being interested in intimate relations with your own type, as it were, or to being exclusively homosexual and having no interest in anyone who's not like you, and a massive spectrum in between that, degrees of attraction and degrees of acting on that attraction. The whys and wherefores, well, there's an academic interest in, is it genetic? Can you literally identify a gay gene, or is it a societal, environmental thing? It's your experiences lead you to develop those attractions. Yeah, there's a sort of academic interest in that, but it's meaningless next to, well, you just have to accept that's how people are. That is how people are. And for the homophobes and the bigots, no explanation is going to make them not be homophobic, because that's the central thing. I've related this story before. Back in my youth in the 80s, the dominant dialectic in gay circles is that, you know, we aren't beasts unable to control our desires. We choose our lives. We choose who we're attracted to. You know, it's my choice to be gay. Now, currently, the mainstream ideology is very opposed to that concept of choice, and the majority of people on the LGBTI spectrum say it's just who I am. It isn't a choice. I didn't choose the attraction I have. It's who I am. And you get back to this idea that it's the makeup of your brain or genetics or whatever. And see, either way, if you say it's a choice, homophobes go, you're choosing to be a terrible, vile, awful thing. And if you say it's genetic or your brain or whatever, then the homophobes say you have a defect that needs to be corrected. We need to find this gay gene and eradicate it. Oh, yes. And there is, of course, in terms of attraction, there's asexual people and aromantic people. How does copying your aro but not ace? So you don't have romantic feelings, but you like to bang. When I grew up, we just called that a man. Hey, romance, that's for the ladies. Sorry. But yes, there is absolutely a spectrum of people who don't have sexual feelings at all, don't have romantic feelings, or only have those feelings under incredibly specific circumstances, to which the majority of the population goes, well, that's odd. I've never felt that way. I think everyone's guilty of that at some point. But I also think it's only natural to impulsively go, if you have a worldview and if you are lucky enough to make sense of your worldview, so you feel like you understand your place in the world and you understand how you interact with other people. When someone tells you their lived experience is completely different to yours, sometimes like the literal opposite, I think it's a natural impulse to go, what the fuck? How can you be like that? That's so strange. But when that translates into judgment and saying, I not only don't really understand in any real sense why you are that way, how you are that way you are is wrong, and I'm going to stop you. That's when you get into bad territory. I think it's natural. You know, it's like I don't eat fish. I think eating fish is gross. Fish is gross, but lots of people like eating fish. I don't understand why they like it. Yes, especially raw fish, sushi. Oh, gross. But some people think it's the best. To take a really innocuous example, someone will get really angry about that. But I think it's a natural first impulse when there's an aspect of them or their life that is so different to yours. A natural impulse is to go, how does that even work? What is that? And it's only a problem when you judge and you try to say, no, that thing you have, that is wrong, and we're going to stop that. And of course, now someone's going, oh, you say that to murderers? No, I'm not. Okay. The boundary of acceptable human behavior is informed consent, basically. Joe, I think John Oliver did it on his. It's like sexual assault. No, he didn't even say. When some people go, oh, everything's sexual assault now? Why can't I flirt it? Why can't I pinch someone's bum? Why can't I? He goes, well, sex is like boxing. If both parties haven't agreed to it, one of them's committing a crime. And it's like, yes, in a controlled environment, boxing's legal. But if you just start punching someone in the street, you're committing a crime. My God, I did a video on this years ago. One of the strangest fucking things, one of these old shock jocks said, he's not even really in the public eye anymore. I'm trying to remember his name. He's even pre-Alex Jones. He was Rush Limbaugh. I was trying to think he was Alex Jones before Alex Jones. Rush Limbaugh got famous on AM talk radio in America in the 80s and 90s. Recently, like in the last year or two, he said this fucking deranged thing, and it was the strangest thing, and it just showed, oh my God, this guy's a fucking rapist, or he is absolutely on board with just random sexual assault. He was going on about the left, and he's basically going on about anything except, he's basically saying anything except one male and one female is sick, perverse, and wrong. And he's saying, oh, but with the left, it's all about consent. It's all about consent. It's like, so long as everyone involved consents, you can have whatever you want. 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people, mixed male and female, doing anything, so long as there's consent. And I'm going, yes, that's literally how it works. If everyone involved gives informed consent, preferably enthusiastic consent, it's all good. So he goes from saying, oh, the left, they just want consent. And then he goes, oh, but as soon as this situation where it's just like a man and a woman, but if there's no consent, here come the rape police. And I was like, no, dude, that's the police. Because if there's no consent between a man and a woman, you are talking about rape. It was the weirdest fucking thing. He went on this whole tear where he said, it's disgusting that the left only care about consent. And he goes, and you can do all this sick, perverse stuff so long as there's consent. But as soon as you don't have consent, here come the rape. And what is wrong? And he just said this. And it's like he's basically saying to the world, if you do icky stuff, I think you're gross, but men should be able to do whatever they want to. It just absolutely did my head in that he could say consent is bad, and it's bad if the police get involved when there's no consent. It's just like absolutely did my head in. And how that motherfucker's not in jail, I'll never know. And not just for shit like that, but, you know, his history of drug abuse and fraud. He's got, oh God, I don't know how many convictions he's got, but it's just like, it is so weird how all these people who want to criticize the morality of the left have a string of fucking criminal convictions. Who knew? What's all that about then? But yeah, no, I just remember that one. That when he did that, that did my head in. How someone could say that out loud. It was basically saying, why are you obsessed about policing consent between men and women when you'll just let all this weird, freaky shit happen so long as they have consent? It's like, wow. He's like one of the, because again, he's always pushing Christianity and it's the most un-Christian person around. It's like, again, these motherfuckers can't fool me. I went through Catholic school. I did Bible studies for 10 fucking years, man. I know the Bible better than this mob. And they are incredibly lucky that none of it is true, because they would all be going straight to hell if, God, if a 10th of the stuff in the Bible was true. All these radical evangelicals would be going straight to hell and to the darkest, dankest, hottest, most torturous corner of hell at that. They would be getting the absolute, and that's not just me being smug and silly. That's explicitly, you read the New Testament and it's explicitly in there, that behavior, that hypocrisy, they don't go to heaven. That's actually categorically black and white there in the Bible, in the New Testament, that these guys are not getting into heaven. No rich person's getting into heaven. That's actually explicitly black and white the teachings of Jesus, not even of the apostles. That is black and white the teachings of Jesus. It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Rich people, no rich person is going to heaven. I mean, they're very lucky it's not true, because none of us are going there. We're just going to be worm food. Sorry to break it to you kids. It's a bit of a downer. I also don't mind if you don't agree with me, if you believe there is some form of afterlife or reincarnation. Cool, it's your thing. It's your thing. That's fine. I don't mind. Oh yeah, Justin, that Tucker Carlson saying the metric system was tyranny. That's okay. That's got to be trolling, right? I mean, Tucker Carlson is very stupid, but his main thing, he's a white supremacist. He's like so fucking racist. He's so deeply into white supremacist ideology. He barely makes any effort to conceal it. Like, he's not just conservative. He doesn't, I just prefer my own kind. I have nothing against the other races. I just prefer my own kind. No, he is, to his core, a white supremacist. It is so obvious. So that ridiculous fuckery with the metric system, because, I mean, it was embarrassing. It was so intelligence insulting and embarrassing. It's not even playing to the cheap seats, because No one in America outside of Grandpa Simpson is saying, I'll be damned if I'm going to go to the metric system. Most people are probably going, I don't want to change because it would confuse me. No one thinks it's tyranny. No one thinks uh, uh, it's imperialism. It's they maybe don't want to change because they're used to certain things, and to a degree, I can understand that. It's stupid, but I can understand it. But that whole thing with him having a whole segment on the metric system is tyranny. That's got to be trolling. That's just misdirection, and it's this stupid fucking thing. These extreme right wing commentators say that they'll say something vile and awful and extreme, and then when you say, well, that's reprehensible, you're garbage, they go, you fell for it. Like they're getting the straight pride parole. It's just a prank, bro. It's not. It's a vile, offensive, homophobic attack. And it's the people behind it are actual neo-Nazis. It's just a cover for their more extreme stuff. And I'm sure this thing with Tucker Carlson is like, look, I owned the left. I triggered the libs by saying this stuff about the metric system. You're not triggering anyone. People are fucking embarrassed. People are embarrassed on your behalf that you say things that fucking stupid. No one's triggered by it. It's ridiculous. Pugwash me on pints. This is a pint. It's about 500 mils. I think it's basically a pint. Very big glass anyway. My blue lemonade. Yeah, Justin, the US uses the metric system for drug trades. It's all about grams and kilos in the drug trade. I think that's the main use of the metric system in the US. I remember we changed measurements like on the roads, etc., from miles to kilometers when I was a kid. I forget the exact year, but I know I was quite young. And yeah, changed weight from pounds to kilograms and whatnot. I still remember being on a road trip. I used to play soccer, and when you grow up in the country, to have any sort of soccer competition, it actually has to be you have to travel town to town. Like you don't have the population to have any decent competition yet. So away games, you're traveling a couple of hours quite often to just play a game of sport. And I remember doing it once in the cars with my soccer coach, and his mum was in the car. And it's weird the things you remember, but this happened. We were driving, and there's a sign to another town. I think the town was Parks, and it said, 65, and I mean it was 65 kilometers away. And his mum goes, "What's wrong with that sign? It's never 65 miles to Parks." And he's going, "It's kilometers, mum. It's kilometers." His mum still hadn't adapted to kilometers. Weird the things that stick in your head. Raddest. Oh yeah, sorry. Absolutely right. Yeah. Triggering is actually a medical term. It's a mental health term, and it is basically proper use is around post-traumatic stress disorder and similar issues. And there are triggering events there, and it's weird. It can be sounds, smells, locations, even just stress can trigger a traumatic incident. And yes, it is a slur, and it's really gross and sick the way people on the right use it. But yeah, that's what they're all about, really. Oh gosh, inches and feet when you watch a YouTube DIY video. Yes, that makes sense. Nathan, your weed's done in ounces and pounds. I thought it's not so much weed, but you always, whenever you hear about cocaine or heroin, it's always grams and kilograms. Oh, Dr. Obama. Why am I mentioning the banhammer Olympics? Nothing's happened yet. We're halfway, and no trolls at all. The saddest sad boy, the boy who clearly has a sexual obsession with me, was up to his usual tricks and sicking his troll drones onto me yesterday. And so I thought they might show up tonight, but they haven't yet. Maybe they won't. Who knows? Who knows? But I thought I might have to give the banhammer a workout tonight. Thus far, it hasn't been an issue. Tuesday was a bit more of a, although I think it was, as is often the case, the trouble I had on Tuesday, I think it was actually one person, and they just had multiple accounts, and they were being, it was typical troll mounting, and it wasn't even about me, but they were just mounting this bad faith argument, and they were just trying to fucking cause trouble, basically. And I went, no, I'm not going along with your dumb bullshit. I am just gonna block you because you're a troll and your argument's in bad faith. There's a big question, Dr. Bummer, did Chuck eat Mimsy? I don't know where she is. I haven't seen her this evening. Nathan, in Australia, people talk pounds and ounces in weed. So you've heard, of course. You wouldn't do the devil's weed. I know you're a fine, upstanding citizen, and you wouldn't touch Satan's pubes, as it's known. Terrible, terrible. Holy cow! A litre of lager pugwash. That is a big thing of beer. Yeah. I mean, a pint's big enough, but a litre is pretty ridiculous. You have different sized drinks by default in pubs in different parts of Australia. It's more common for pubs to sell pints here now. No one did pints when I was growing up. In New South Wales, where I grew up, there were two sizes, middy and schooner. Middy was the smaller one, and schooner was the larger one. A schooner is smaller than a pint. So you imagine a middy is quite small. In Victoria, the common size for beer was called a pot, and a pot is between a middy and a schooner. And it's different from state to state, really confusing. I remember one time being in a bar in Sydney and a guy asked for a beer, and the bar staff said, middy or schooner, and he's just lost, and he's just going, what? And they're saying, you want a middy or a schooner? And it was weird that, or maybe the bar staff just couldn't be asked, but they didn't seem to understand he wasn't familiar with the terms middy and schooner, and it was obviously in. And so I was next to him and I just said, do you want a little drink or a big drink? And he went, oh, the big one. Okay, give him a schooner. And it's just like, I don't think there was even schooners in Victoria. Charlie, you're saying in Queensland it's pot and schooner. I don't think they even had schooners in Victoria. Someone who's been in Victoria and a beer drinker longer than me could maybe answer that. But I have a feeling it was just pots here. But now, broadly, pints are much more common. Yeah, Radis, the pint's only 568 mils. Yeah. This is basically a pint glass. It's more than 500 mils. So I don't even remember where I got this. I like big glasses though. Nice pugwash. In Spain, if you ask for a pint, they think you mean pinto, which is small. Ultra Cerveza. No, Red Scorpion. No. The only you have to, if you go to a specialty place, you might get one of those mass. I've got a really huge beer stein in there. It might hold close to a litre. I'll quickly look at schooner size. Okay, so a schooner is 10 fluid ounces, which is 285 mils. Here, the beer in Australia Wikipedia page. The different sizes that it's sold in. 20th century. Beers by region, specialty beers, beer glasses. Yeah, the main ones where I grew up were midi and a schooner. And a midi is half a pint. A midi is a half pint. Pint is 20 fluid ounces, and a midi is 10 fluid ounces. Schooner is 15 fluid ounces, right in the middle. And I do remember they had sevens in most pubs as well. That's smaller again, a 7 ounce. That was for the ladies. Only the ladies who get a 7. So I'm looking at this table. It says Canberra was midi schooner pint. Darwin, yeah, apparently they call a midi a handle in Darwin. That's an interesting one. Like in Brisbane, yes, they had pots and schooners. They're saying a pot is a midi, and a 7 is just a beer. If you just ask for a beer, you get a 7. I like it. In Adelaide, apparently a 7 was a butcher. Oh, and just to really fucking confuse things, what are you doing, Adelaide? Adelaide apparently traditionally called a midi a schooner, and they called a schooner a pint. Even though a schooner is not a pint, it's smaller than a pint. And then they had an imperial pint. My God, what is wrong with you, Adelaide? Why would you do that? And they're saying in Hobart, they just called them by name, a 6 ounce, 7 ounce, 10 ounce from midi, and they'd even call a schooner a 15. And they're saying in Melbourne, yeah, I thought so. They're saying people didn't really use schooners here, although it was known. Yeah, it's pots, or the smaller 7 was just called a glass. That confirms my theory that they did not have schooners here in Melbourne. Probably some places do now. Dr. Obama, I've ever tried Goon. I don't like even good wine, but I definitely do. Dr. Obama, gin. Mrs. Angry likes gin. I don't mind gin in cocktails, but like Mrs. Angry will have a gin and tonic, and I don't like tonic water either. So I'm not really like a gin and tonic fan, but I'll definitely make gin cocktails. Got a fucking huge bottle of gin up there from Costco on the weekend, because I don't usually drink it, so I didn't bother to replace it when it was all gone. And Mrs. Angry was a bit affronted that I couldn't make her a gin cocktail because I didn't have any gin, so it's probably like a year's supply what I got up there. I'll go to the Bavarian for schnitzels, and they have litre steins. I've got a huge fucking stein up there. It's probably a litre. It's very big. I used to get like this huge stein, huge glass stein, and just chunk it full of ice and like pour my Pepsi on that. And it was so cold, so I'd actually shiver when I was having a drink because it was so cold. It was slightly silly behaviour on my place. I won't. Pugwash beers in England are just a pint and a half. Yes. Well, I don't drink beer, but I have had cider. That was, in fact, the first time I had cider was with a YouTube friend, Steve, in London, going to a pub, and I was just going to get a non-alcoholic drink because there's all these beers I don't drink. And he went, "No, I have a cider," and I don't think I like cider. He goes, "No, you will. You'll like cider. It's fine." And yeah, I do. I like cider. And of course, much as beer can mean an enormous number of things in different flavors, there are, of course, lots of different ciders as well. So she called gin pine sol, the pine scented floor scent. Oh dear. Charlie, those liqueurs you're talking about, are they alcoholic? Because I've seen someone advertising these really interesting flavor things and they're calling them liqueurs, but they're not alcoholic. Blood orange and fig and ginger, apple and hibiscus, orange, fig and ginger one's delicious. That does sound interesting. I've got some good flavored bitters from a specialist shop that have some pretty funky flavors that are good for flavor. I actually like putting bitters in just like my Pepsi. That flavors it, makes it a little bit different. Okay, I might look at that, Charlie. They're just a gin-based one at Dan Murphy's. Okay. I depends. I've got a lot of alcohol. Oh, maybe I should make a cocktail now. I don't know. Will I do a themed cocktail or I'll just make one of my favorites? The one I made in the live stream, I don't know, a week or two ago, a while ago, that I just kind of improvised with the apple and pear brandy I've got there. I made a version of a sidecar. Sidecar, you normally have brandy or cognac, and I used some German apple and pear brandy to give it a different flavor, and Cointreau and lemon juice, and then I put a splash of my red absinthe on the top, and that was actually super fucking good. Named that the apple and pear way to Hades, as opposed to a stairway to heaven. Threw in a bit of Cockney rhyming slang for the apple and pears, but with the red absinthe on the top. It's the apple and pears to Hades. Pugwash, a slippery nipple. You'll never make friends at a bar if you ask for a slippery nipple. I don't even know what's in that. I have obviously heard of it. What does Google say? Because often it's interesting. Okay, it's usually a shot for a start. Sambuca and Irish cream. What a shitty fucking drink. Oh my God. I was looking about, yes, related drinks. A quick fuck or a red-headed slut. There was that. I think that came from the 80s, giving cocktails named like that. Red-headed slut is made from Jägermeister and schnapps and cranberry juice. I've got Jaeger. Again, I could substitute my apple and pears for a peach schnapps. And I've got cranberry as well, I think. I could make a red-headed slut. What was the other one? The quick fuck. And yeah, the cock-sucking cowboy. Good Lord. Yes. You're a rube. Quick fuck is Midori and schnapps and Irish cream. Ugh. Gross. Yeah, you do not make friends with bartenders by ordering drinks like that. Oh, Kaiju, I love me a random D&D fact. Best class to play are bards because they can roast people to death. Nice. So should they cocktails too? Grey Papes and Scooby snacks? Well, I got a Lillet Blanc. Look, maybe I should duck off. I might find Mimsy, bring her back in to say hello, and I might bring in my cocktail book and get an inspiration. I'll leave Chuck in charge. So Chuck, don't misbehave. I'll leave you in charge and be back in 30 seconds. I think she'd run away by the time. All right, I'm back. I just thought, what was that I saw Pugwash? You went to a biker bar and your mate wanted a Bacardi. Is Bacardi too soft for a biker bar? It's rum. I suppose it's a dorky rum. Would they be happy with Captain Morgan or like Kraken black rum or something? Oh God, your games sound like fun. Warcraft game you spent almost every turn in combat dunking on the undead. Nice. Ah dear. What's a spirit that, and again, so I suppose I shouldn't be going into a biker bar asking. I would not go into a biker bar, basically. I certainly wouldn't ask for a cocktail in a biker bar. Yeah, so you can't go wrong in Queensland with Bundy. Pugwash Bacardi's a girls' drink. It's a 70s girls' drink. I don't think I don't think I have any white rum. There's a white rum made in Queensland that I found called Beanley. White rum's good for cocktails because it doesn't colour them. Red Scorpion, what's wrong with girls' drinks? No, I'm the cocktail drinker, man. So, oh yeah, I saw that thing about they released a lot of details about preference flows in Tony Abbott's seat of Warringah, where he got smashed and replaced by an independent. And that was like a very strong vote against Tony Abbott, as against the trend of things going very favourably for the Liberal Party. So it was very much about Abbott's a piece of shit and people were sick of him. Oh gosh, yeah, beer. You can't go wrong with beer, I guess, unless you order a really fruity beer. All right, I'm going to try and get this one. The Graduate, Vermouth and Scotch Curacao. All that. The Brave Companion, bourbon, lemon juice, creme de cacao, vanilla syrup. I could put I think I've got some vanilla. I could have a little bit of vanilla and some, I've never made this, bourbon, lemon juice, creme de cacao. The summary, vanilla and chocolate. Yeah, I was apprehensive too at first, but what works right with strawberry in the middle in the Neapolitan ice cream also works smashingly with bourbon and releasing of it. I think I'll make that. I've never made this one. I think I've got some vanilla over here. I don't have vanilla syrup, but I have some vanilla essence probably from the cooking. Young Mr. Angry is cooking all the time. I'm sure there'd be some vanilla essence up there. Use vanilla essence and some of my, oh, sorry, Chuck's in the way, Mimsy. Mimsy, yes, Mimsy, you're going to look after things when I go for a little walk, Mimsy? I got to get a couple things. I'm going to get a couple things, Mimsy. You've got to look after things for me. All right, now this one sounds good. I'm going to try and make this one. I'm going to go over here and get some vanilla essence. Where is it? What's this? Vanilla essence. I thought it was food coloring, but it's vanilla essence. I win. So I'm going to use just a little bit of vanilla essence. Oh, you're so interested, aren't you, Mimsy? Yes. Yes, you are. You like to know what's going on. All right. I've got my ridiculously large bottle of bourbon somewhere from Costco. Haven't even opened it. 1.75 litres of bourbon. Put that over there. Oh. So what was it? It was lemon? I'll look this one up because I've never made this one. Brave creme de cacao, that's right. So it's a 2-ounce bourbon and just a little bit of creme de cacao. Okay. Yep, I'm going to do that. Okay. Got my Jugo. Where's my creme de cacao? Lemon juice. All right. I've got all the pieces. I need my cocktail shaker and a glass to put it in. All right. Last couple things. Mimsy's still in charge. Wash. Cocktail shaker. Okay. Put one of my big blocks of light. Again, it's probably not how you traditionally do it, but I like doing it this way. I'm a rebel. I'll never ever be any good. Oh, a big ice cube. Alright, so got everything now. Oh, okay. Publish was the bourbon about $200. No, that's freaking Jim Beam is cheap. That was, I don't remember how much, but $80, $60? I don't remember. I don't remember. Okay, so got my measuring thing. You're in charge, Mimsy. So this is the Brave Companion. All right, so there's 1 and a bit shots of bourbon. I'm just, no, I don't want to do it just in the glass and stir. I actually want to shake it because I'm going to put some syrup in, but that's okay. We'll just... Okay, little bit more bourbon. Okay, this is more professional. 1.5 shots. It's okay. I'm going to bed soon. Oh my God. Pugwash Jack Daniels, $20 later. Well, alcohol's basically quite expensive in Australia compared to most places, but particularly compared to the US. And that's because of the taxes on it. And I have to admit, even though I'm sitting here building up this absurdly expensive collection of booze, I am in favor of that because, alcohol abuse is a big problem. A little bit of vanilla essence. Oh, I don't know where my syrup's gone. I have to find it. Wait, what am I doing? Lemon juice. I remember being really stunned at how cheap alcohol was in America. It's absolutely wild. Oh, nice, Catherine. You just poured yourself a vodka lemonade. If you're not used to Australian alcohol prices, pretty devastating. Where's my syrup gone? Here it is. It's just here. All right, a little bit of agave syrup. Squeeze that in there, and I've got to do the shaky thing. Oh, vodka lemonade and bitters. That actually sounds pretty good. I want this. One sip. Certainly feel it. Okay, so we've got to do a little bit of the shaky. And make sure that syrup mixes in, basically. There you go. I like trying brand new ones on the live streams. This is the Brave Companion. We all want a Brave Companion. Oh, it's probably going to look like pea on the live stream. It's a nice amber color. Looks a bit more orangey on there. It's like someone, if you're taking a piss, but you're a bit dehydrated. Looks a little bit. All right, now the moment of truth. What does it taste like? Of course, smells like bourbon. Ooh, that's pretty good, actually. Whoa. Yeah, you got a chocolatey flavor from the creme de cacao. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a straight whiskey drinker. Like some people get very serious about their whiskey and they can taste all the different ones. I'm one of those people who does not get enjoyment from drinking straight whiskey, whether it be Scotch, bourbon, rye, or some other variant. So it looks like guava juice. It is, it's guava juice. I'm being healthy. Guava juice is a superfood. That's what I'm doing. Just having a guava juice. Rat Scorpion, wink, straight whiskey, drinking any fun if you have a good whiskey. I mean, look, I can certainly tell the difference between a terrible whiskey and a good whiskey, but all the, you get people, because, there are thousands of whiskies in the world, thousands of decent quality whiskies in the world. And you get the people who'll, do the whole tasting thing, and they'll tell you all I can't, this smells like peat with touches of walnut. And I can't taste any of that. I just can't. Unfiltered spirits to me are a bit intense. But cocktails, on the other hand, oh yeah. Like, one of my all-time favorites is the classic whiskey sour, and that's a really simple one. That's just whiskey, lemon juice, a sweetener. Like, I use this agave syrup. You can use sugar or sugar syrup, and egg white. Not everyone does it with egg white, but I like to do it with egg white. It gives it a frothy top and gives it a bit of texture. Pugwash, have I seen the Black Books episode with wines? No, I've not watched a lot of Black Books. I've watched a little bit. I do enjoy it, but never got that into it that I decided I must seek out all the episodes and watch them. So I do not know the episode with the wines. I have a vision of that going one of two ways: him being very serious about wines but still getting really smashed, or him not being able to taste the difference between all the wines and getting really smashed. I figure either way he ends up getting really smashed. That's my guess. How well do I know Black Books? That's what I think will happen. So no, that was pretty good. I was a bit cautious with I can taste the vanilla though. I was a bit cautious with the vanilla essence. I put quite a small amount of vanilla essence in. It would probably be okay with it. No, I don't think it does need more. As it stands, that's pretty, like, it's weird, because bourbon's obviously a reasonably strong taste. But the combination of the creme de cacao and the vanilla and the lemon juice, this does not really taste like bourbon at all. A little bit of bourbon taste in there, but it's mostly the chocolate and vanilla, I realize now. So the more I think, I started off saying, yeah, could have more vanilla in it. The more I think about it, no, it doesn't need more vanilla. I don't want any more vanilla in there. Oh, my weird voice is upsetting Mimsy. I'm sorry, Mimsy. Do you not like that voice? Is that, Nathan? You like the sonic screwdriver? It's vodka, vanilla vodka, with blue curacao built over ice and a highball topped with lemonade. I don't want to judge, Nathan. That sounds pretty soft, mate. Sounds like I'd really like it. Yes. I don't drink so many of the tall drinks, the ones that have soda or lemonade. I tend to drink the ones that are more just the actual spirits and the flavors in a smaller thing, rather than the long drinks that have usually soda or lemonade or tonic or something similar. Oh, Lindsay's going for a wander, or just come down here to get. You want to sit on my lap? She wants to sit on my lap. It's not really a lap in this chair. You can sit on one leg. Pugwash, the Black Books episode was called Grapes of Wrath. Of course it was. Drank the cheap old dusty bottles. So were they drinking terrible wine or unknowingly drinking really expensive wine? Scorpion, off to lunch. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you have a good lunch and look after yourself. Hope to see you again soon. This is the fun thing about the internet. All the times that I still remember, because I've been on the internet for a long time, like since the mid-90s. And IRC was big, Internet Relay Chat. text-based chat thing. And I remember at one point we realized in the chat room where we were chatting, there were people in Australia, England, South Africa, a couple different European countries, a couple different Asian countries. Like, it was this, without us ever planning it, there was this amazing multinational conversation happening, and it absolutely blew my mind. Nowadays, we kind of take it for granted. Any sort of chat thing on the internet, it's going to have people from all around the world. But it was a major novelty in the 90s, and it really blew my mind. Pugwash, so yeah, okay. They were house sitting and unknowingly drank the really expensive wine. Sorry, Mimsy's just demanding more attention over here. What are you doing? You're going to stand over here. You could sit up on your perch and I could scratch your chin and you could be saying hello to everyone as well, you know. Oh, Pugwash, you're in a Star Wars mud. This is the terminology. When you say mud, people don't like. Mud was a multi-user dungeon. Dungeons in the term of Dungeons and Dragons, in that it was a game space. Well, we have muds and moos. I'm trying to remember what the acronym moos stood for, and I can't remember. I did not get heavily into the muds and moos. I did it a little bit. There was a period where I spent a lot of time on Usenet, which was like a database. It was an internet-based database of information and posts. It was proto-Facebook, because some of the Usenet groups were informational and some were social. And surprisingly, for the internet, some were just where people posted porn. And what was hilarious is trying to explain to kids today, porn in the 90s and dial-up internet was photos. Video was just not a thing that could happen with a limited bandwidth. But even with photos, a single photo took ages to download. It was a very bizarre way to spend your time in the 90s, to wait at least a couple of minutes for a single porn photo to download. It's very bizarre, very bizarre. The internet's 10% porn and 90% copies of that porn. Well, the internet is apparently close to 75% spam. We always joke that it's all porn, but while porn is a decent chunk, apparently the majority of internet traffic is spam. So, yeah, what I was thinking, there was a hierarchy in Usenet groups. I was only ever on social culture ones for different countries, SOC, and that would be information about countries. And of course, there was the alt. There's like the dipshits who called themselves the alt-right. That actually stems back to the early days of the commercial or in pre-commercial internet. The Usenet groups was like all the serious ones that had a top-level domain that was 3 letters, and they all meant different things. And everything else, all the weird shit, was in alt. And that literally meant it could be anything. It's usually quite weird shit in the alt Usenet groups. CrossFitter, were I ever elite? I don't know. I think I fooled some people into thinking I might have known stuff, but I've never been a programmer, let alone a hacker. But I did know a few people. I met one of the famous old hackers, Captain Crunch. His nickname was Captain Crunch because he was a phone freaker, even before connected computers. The hobbyists in the 70s, and this is what Apple computers and, well, to an extent, Microsoft grew out of. was the hobbyists in the 70s, and the hackers and those, they call them phone freakers. They worked out when you put coins in a payphone, and all the things you did on a payphone was actually sending tones down the phone line. That's how it worked. The phone box, when you put a coin in, it goes, okay, that was 10 cents. I'm going to send this tone to say you paid 10 cents and whatnot. So people worked out if they could replicate the tones, they could get free phone calls. And one of the more famous ones was this guy who became known as Captain Crunch, because he used this cheap plastic whistle that came in a Captain Crunch cereal box, and he manipulated the tones it makes so he could make free phone calls. Yeah, I met him at a rave in the 90s. I see a few people know who Captain Crunch is. I've heard terrible things about him recently, but in the 90s, he's quite a bit older than me. I met him at a rave. I was going to say, he was off his chops. I think we were both off our chops. I think he was, from memory, he was missing a lot of teeth too, but he was kind of fun. He actually spent quite a few years in Australia. I'm not sure exactly how much, but I know he was here for quite a while. Yeah, even at the time, I knew the significance of, oh, meeting Captain Crunch. He's one of the proto phone freakers. He's a little bit of computer history. And it was at a rave in Sydney. One of my friends knew someone who said, oh, this guy's Captain Crunch. And I went, oh, and we talked, and he was just partying because he was off his chops on acid, I think. So I didn't have a long conversation with him, but I did meet him. There you go. Ah, no. Lemonhead, you're trying to explain Merc to a younger kid at work. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I went on some bulletin boards, like dial-up bulletin boards, where the bandwidth was so slow. When you typed, you would actually, when someone typed, you would actually see the words come up a letter at a time. It'd be like tick, 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 like the phone lines transmitting the stuff one letter at a time. Yes, bandwidth, man, wasn't that a challenge back in the day? I went on, this is the other thing, in the early days of the internet, besides going on the internet, you could use your modem and phone line to direct dial other computers. That was the early version of the internet, direct dialing another computer. Now, maybe it was at a university, so it was like a big database, so it was like a version of like the internet, but you also had these local things that were set up. We just call them bulletin boards, and it's like multiple people could dial into the same computer, and you could post stuff, text only, and you could get involved in live text chat. But they were very localized. Like you'd literally be dialing a local phone number to connect to a bulletin board. And yeah, so that was a really ghetto version of the internet. But yeah, everything early internet, anything that was more complex than text or really simple low-res photos or very low-res animated GIFs, it was not really on. So you're off your chops on acid for a while in the 90s. That was a 90s thing. That was very much a 90s thing. Don't do drugs, kids. It's not big or clever. I don't know why I feel compelled to put that disclaimer in, but I just felt like being silly and putting that in. Hey, speaking of weird and acid and whatnot, I think I mentioned this on Tuesday. I've started listening to Alan Moore's book, Jerusalem, because I listened to an interview with Alan Moore on Chapo Trap House, and I've watched or listened to a few Alan Moore interviews. And he's kind of funny because he's just a grumpy old man. He's a legend in comics. like started on the 2000 AD Judge Dredd comics. He wrote V for Vendetta and a couple of others that have been turned into movies. That Watchmen, famously, he wrote Watchmen, and he had nothing to do with the movie. I don't think he liked it. I think he was more involved. I could be wrong. I think he was more involved in V for Vendetta. But Alan Moore's just a grumpy old bloke, and he's hilarious because I love grumpy old blokes because I'm a grumpy old bloke. And he's, I don't know, 20 years older than me. And he's normally just a grumpy old bloke in interviews. But in this one on Chapo Trap House, he's actually quite up. But he's talking about really wild, out there philosophy, metaphysics, science. And I loved it. And they talked about his book, Jerusalem, which is apparently 1,500 pages. And I'd been meaning to sign up to bloody Audible for a while. So I thought I'll sign up to Audible and get it as my free book. And it's the recorded spoken word version is 70 hours. And I think I've got through about 3 hours in the last couple of days, like just on my commute to and from work. And it's just starting to get weird. It keeps jumping time zones. And I think he's going to end up talking about, there's a lot about architecture and science and ghosts and magic and metaphysics and who knows. Oh my God, Nathan, Telnet. Jesus, I'd forgotten Telnet. That was the other thing. Direct dialing your friend's computer to either, I played Doom via Telnet, but also to swap files between computers. Literally direct dialing your friend's computer. So fucking hell. Jesus, and even fucking dial-up was not straightforward. Like fucking Jesus, you kids today with your always on internet. Like we had to connect to a phone line, and in the early days, the fucking dialing software, there was all different sorts of dialing software, like, oh, am I doing a slip or a PPP connection? And there's all these different dial-up software, and some was more reliable than others. There was no fucking guarantee when you dialed up, was it actually going to connect? You get this ridiculous noise. Like you'd go, and you'd hear a phone ring, and then there's this ridiculous grinding noise from your modem as it's doing a handshake with the computer at the other end. And you were never actually sure if you would even fucking connect. Oh my God, it was a nightmare. Yeah, no, Justin, the dial-up sound was real. That was basically, it was your modem communicating with the computer at either another modem or a computer or a network at the other end. We call it the handshake. It was the digital handshake. And it's basically your modem is sending information and the other end is sending information and then negotiating a protocol to connect to each other. And it didn't always work. Sometimes, oh my God, sometimes you'd have to try 12 times to get a connection. Jesus. Oh my God, it was so fucking painful. And then they kind of standardized dial-up software. Thank fuck. But once you got to broadband, and you weren't literally dialing a number, it got a bit more sense. And now it's like, you don't fucking dial up, you just switch it on and you're there, oh my God. But dial-up was such a pain in the ass. Because it just didn't, it's not just that it was slow, it didn't always work. Oh my God. The days when you had the thing on redial 20 or 30 times. Jesus. It was such a nightmare. So you collected the AOL CD. See, that wasn't a big thing here. Obviously, America Online was not big in Australia. I think AOL did have an operation here for a little while. But it wasn't quite the same. I remember I'll still have it somewhere. A CD, it was like a tribute album, a tribute to AC/DC, a whole bunch. I think it was mainly, if not all, contemporary Australian acts covering AC/DC songs as tribute to AC/DC. The CD was called Fuse Box, I remember now. And on top of all the songs, there was dial-up software for an internet service provider. There was a period where that was relatively common, where if you got a music CD, there would also be software on it for the internet. There's a period, and I actually remember, because computers basically can communicate with sound. I remember there was a period in the 80s with some pop bands, when they released a single, the B-side was actually a computer game. And the idea is you connected the turntable to your computer and played the B-side, and the sound that transmitted down into your computer would load some shitty simple game. I remember the Thompson twins did it. I'm showing my age now. But these were like absurdly simple games. I remember Tandy Electronics, which was Radio Shack in the US, had their computers, the TRS-80 and a couple others, where the data source was a cassette player. Software was on cassettes, because that's magnetic tape. Floppy disks were magnetic. It's the same principle. So the program was on a cassette, and it's literally not a special cassette, it's just a fucking cassette. You put in a cassette player, which is connected to the PC, and press play, and after anywhere between 10 minutes and half an hour, some shit, stupid, really simple game would be on the computer, because the computer didn't have enough memory to keep the games on the computer. You'd have to load them each time you wanted to play them. Oh my God. Oh, we were cavemen. Chantel, hello to you. Got in just before the end. Charlie, you remember Aqua had a CD with a game? Yeah. Yeah, there was all sorts of I used to love some of the screensavers in the 90s. What was the one with the flying toasters? And they had some screensavers that I really liked. And there's a period with the CRT, the cathode ray tube monitors, if your computer was going to be on for a long time, you actually needed a screensaver, because if you left like a Word document or something on the screen, it would actually burn into the screen. You still see some old ATMs at banks where the default screen has actually burnt into the little CRT. Or they're probably mostly being replaced now, but God knows that you get old things. It was called After Dark. I just looked it up. I loved the After Dark screensavers, and there were different versions of it, but they had, oh man, some of them were so good. I loved some of them. Flying Toasters was the one that was most famous. I'm looking them up now. Starry Night, I quite liked that one. Oh yeah, and a fish tank. Yeah, oh my God. There were so many of them. Oh, there was some weird shit in the 90s. In the 80s and 90s, Jesus, we had some weird shit. And we just thought it was so cool. We thought it was amazing. I was really into it. I really liked it. So she had a TRS-80. I was too poor to have a TRS-80. I used to play with it in the shops. Oh yeah, Nathan Kircher. I had that Regurgitator album that had really, really low-res versions of their videos on it. That was 2-playing, wasn't it? I was quite a fan of Regurgitator. Hey, Chantel, Leisure Suit Larry. What a game that, or games. There's so many Leisure Suit Larry games. Oh yes, Justin Mopey Fit. Oh my God, everyone who remembers this shit is betraying their age. I remember Mopey Fish. Yes, there were all these things that were trying to get you to engage with your computer, and you had to do certain things with them. God, we had weird shit in the 80s and 90s. I get Pokewash. Is that Chiptunes, the website guy who does music under the name Trash80? That sounds like he should be doing chiptunes. Yeah. Oh yes, so Space Quest, and that pinball machine you had on. Was that called Space Quest? Pinball machine you had on Windows PCs pre-internet. Is what you'd play when your internet connection went. It was Space Quest was the pinball machine, yeah. That's what you'd play when your internet connection went down. Trash80.com. Oh wow. It's like where I remember playing this. 2 games. I don't know. The other one I was thinking of was on Commodore 64, I think, which a friend of mine had. Again, I was too fucking poor white trash to have a computer, play friends' computers. The TRS-80 had this sort of space game where the graphics was just text. Like they were doing stuff with ASCII text. That was the extent of the graphics on it, was ASCII text. And then and that was clearly a knockoff of Star Trek. But then I remember a friend had a Commodore 64 that had a Star Trek game on it, where you explored the universe, and when you were making first contact with all these planets, and the people were either, it was randomly generated, they were either very friendly, which meant everything would go, slightly friendly, which meant it would probably go well, but it was possible you could fuck it up. Neutral, which you had to be careful what you could do because it could go either way. Then there was hostile, which meant they were predisposed to be angry at you, but you could win them over. And then there was very hostile, and it was, as soon as you came into the orbit with their planet, they'd attack you. And you had to, survive as long as you could. And then you'd also have random marauding Klingons attack you. But it's like super basic games, but I remember being totally engrossed in them. I think actual things I had a very early game, like it literally had a Pong game system in the house. And I think we had a really early, I don't even remember if it was Nintendo, but it was super fucking first generation cartridge game, like super basic games. Nathan, 2-Playing is a great album with the Kung Fu Sing and Blubber Boy were the big hits off it. Very much a fan of Regurgitator, and they're kind of still around in some form or another, as I understand it. They went through a few lineup changes over the years, a few mutations, but I love 2 things about Regurgitator. I love the music. They did really quite good music, but their sense of humor, I thought they were fucking hilarious. Apparently they did. I remember reading in an interview they didn't like it when people called them cynical, which was a thing that your mainstream press tend to call them. I just thought they were funny. I thought they were fucking hilarious. I loved their sense of humor. I mean, seriously, Regurgitator's second album opened with a song that I like your old stuff better than your new stuff. And it's just like just a preempting thing. And another one about the advancement of their career. They had a song called I Sucked a Lot of Cock to Get Where I Am Today. And it was just, they were just basically saying that's how you get across, that's how you get ahead in the music industry. And they're like, you know, like, and we're not talking metaphorically, you literally have to suck cock. And I think a lot of the people in the industry weren't really keen on Regurgitator recording songs like I sucked a lot of cock to get where I am today. But and then they the song I Like Your Old Stuff Better Than Your New Stuff was a really sort of dreamy electronica thing. Then they released a version as a single that was a really pumping sort of dance track, and they called that I Like Your Old Remix Better Than Your New Remix. And it actually had different lyrics as well. I always remember the song they're talking about, one of the public deriding what Regurgitator were doing, and it was like, there's a line like, have you heard how bad the new Regurgitator is? But there's a line like, it sounds like a cross between Cold Chisel and the Prodigy. And that was an insult. A cross between Cold Chisel and the Prodigy was an insult. So, but they were funny. I don't think so. They asked around, but you haven't followed them since. I don't think I've heard anything new from Regurgitator for a very long time, but I thought they were still around in some form or another. But yes, I think they were a significant contributor to the Australian music scene, doing things differently. I mean, oh, I think as I said before, with music these days, I'm getting quite into streaming. I hadn't got into streaming, but I got YouTube Premium because, you know, they offered me a free trial period, and I went, oh, I just wanted to, and there is some original. I haven't watched any of the no, that's not strictly true. I watched a couple of episodes of an original thing and then stopped. I want to watch the Karate Kid sequel at one point, the Cobra Kai, that there's 2 seasons of that I've heard good things about on YouTube Premium. But I got it because I might watch some of the premium content, but also no more ads on YouTube. And also when I watch creators, they get a couple of cents. So I thought that's okay. But then I found out that also gives you access to YouTube Music, a streaming service, which I didn't even know. So yeah, I've started with, because YouTube Music, or because I watch, when I'm on YouTube, I watch a lot of music videos, and it keeps track of what music videos you watch. So I listen to some of the preset playlists on YouTube Music, and then occasionally I specifically search something and, you know, play the new thing from such a, or play this really old shit I just remembered, and then it has a customized auto-generated thing based on what you've been listening to, and I quite like that most of the time. Occasionally when I'm on YouTube, I deliberately find some really weird shit just to mix up their customized playlist for me. Yeah, listen to Bloodywood, which is an Indian heavy metal band that merges the traditional Indian music sounds with heavy metal. And then I found basically every culture does that. There's like Celtic music mixed with heavy metal. There's this band, what are they called? They're called The Who, H-U. They're like, their music is like traditional Mongol sounds mixed with metal mixed with even a little bit of sort of country, like Raikuta type country and western, for a really quite interesting sound. But yeah, I make sure to watch some weird stuff on YouTube just to mix up the auto-generated playlists. Don't want it to get too comfortable, basically. But anyway, we've made it to 10 o'clock. I did not get a single troll. What was that even about? I thought we might get swamped. Didn't get a goddamn single troll, which is fucking awesome because they're boring as hell. Mimsy, where are you? You're just down there. Where'd you go? She's just sharpening her claws a second ago. Oh, there you are, sharpening her claws again. You're going to come up and say goodnight? Because I'm saying goodnight. I'm going to come up here. Come up here. Come on, come up and say goodnight. Say goodnight before I go. What are you doing? You're so easily distracted. Come up here. That's it. All the way up. There you go. Say goodnight to your fans. Okay, a couple of people agree Cobra Kai is good. It looks good, and I've heard lots of good things about it, so I've got to watch it at some point. All right. Say goodnight to the people, Mimsy. We're going to go to bed now. Literally, I go to bed. She goes and sleeps on top of me or next to me. Don't you? Don't you? You demand space on my bed. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Okay. Take care of yourself, one and all. Thank you for coming along. It's been great to have your company as per usual. Pugwash, I'll try and remember Trash 80. Chiptunes. Nice. Yeah, so look after yourself, one and all. I hope to see you again soon. But I will say bye for now. Bye-bye.